pancake. I'm from Mulan. I will bring honor to us all.
So, a couple of days ago, I watched the new live-action Mulan film, and I walked away from the experience more disgruntled than I did at the end of Kingdom Hearts 3. Mulan is one of my favorite animated films, so this was the only live-action iteration I had any interest in. Despite some early reports giving me the same red flags that veered me away from the other reimagined films, I sat down and watched it anyway. The bar set by my expectations wasn't low, but it also wasn't high either. Even after tempering my expectations, I was surprised to see just how thoroughly I disliked this film. I disliked it so much that I figured it would be best to make a video about it rather than just rant mercilessly to anyone that would listen. Up front, there will be spoilers for Mulan 2020 since I'll need to explain in detail why things rubbed me the wrong way or fell flat. Second, as much as I would rather not, I'm going to have to compare this film to its animated counterpart. The original animation had a very concise narrative with nuanced storytelling that is completely lost in the remake. It's important to measure these against one another to illustrate how this new version could have lived up to or exceeded what came before it. It's also important to make the comparison since they decided to slap the Mulan name on it. Sure, there's the argument that if this iteration of Mulan existed in a vacuum, wholly separate from the animation, it would be a good film. And to that I say, no. On its own, this movie is watchable at best and mind-numbingly boring at worst. Without wasting any more time, let's get to it. Honestly, it's probably best to just go down my bullet points chronologically. I legitimately took notes while I was watching this film. I got a bad feeling in my gut when the movie started talking about Chi for some reason, and then we get to see Mulan as a kid being super martial artsy fartsy, and you get the first inklings of just how much wire work is in this movie. Now, not to get too sidetracked, but as someone who enjoys really grounded martial arts films like The Raid, Rumble in the Bronx, Fist of Legend, and so on, I cannot stand exaggerated wire work. It really yanks me out of the moment when it isn't implemented with care. In a film like Kung Fu Hustle, it works because the movie is a comedy, so your suspension of disbelief kicks into high gear very early. With Mulan, it just made me cringe since it's used to make the characters feel grander than they probably should be. Mulan suddenly has a sister, and now the grandma is absent. The sudden appearance of a sister character literally serves no purpose whatsoever. At least the grandmother in the animation was a source of humor. And speaking of humor, this movie is a fucking desert in terms of laughs. I mean, I laughed a lot at this movie, but probably not in the way the writers intended. There are maybe a handful of attempted jokes in this film that fall so flat, which is a shame because moments of levity are brilliant times to misdirect an audience and make serious tone shifts hit harder. Moving on, we're introduced to the main antagonists of the film, the Rorans, led by Boris Khan and a witch character that can turn into an eagle or a falcon, I'm not a bird person, whose name I'm not even sure was mentioned at all in this film.
Witch. NANI?!
She's supposed to be the representation of the eagle or falcon or whatever that Shang had in the original animation, but her inclusion in this form is problematic as we'll see later. As far as Shang goes, listen, I get it. The Rorans are more historically accurate than the Huns. I get it. But it didn't make the movie better, which I assume was the goal. Cultural accuracy is incredibly important, so I do have to give that to Disney. Historical accuracy doesn't always make for memorable storytelling though. Boris Khan sounds like the bootleg version of Shao Kahn a guy in a trench coat would sell you in a New York alleyway. The introduction of the villains show off more of that elegant wire work, and gives an inciting incident for the reason the Emperor is drafting dudes. Information we didn't really need? Oh god, they dragged poor Jet Li into this. Naturally, we get the scene where orders are being given out to each household. I did a bit of a double take when they referred to Mulan's family as the Hua family. Maybe I'm remembering that incorrectly, but wasn't it the Fa family in the OG? It's not a big deal, just something I noticed. Anyway, of course, Mulan's pops can't go to war because he's basically a disabled war vet already. Remember how iconic the scene was when she steals her father's gear, cuts her hair, and leaves in the middle of the night? All of the emotional weight of that decision is stripped right out. We don't even get the iconic hair cutting moment, which was a big deal in terms of showing how committed Mulan was to her charade. By now, you'll have noticed that I've said nothing about Mushu, arguably one of the best things about the animation aside from the music. That's because he's nowhere to be found, which is also a big part of why this movie resides in the depths of a humorless sinkhole. Instead of Mushu, we get a very real, very unsubtle Phoenix. It literally does nothing except silently act like a GPS when Mulan needs it. We're apparently in a world where witches, chi, and magic in general exist, so why not throw in an unambiguously mythical creature? If you take Mushu and the family spirits aside, the animation for Mulan was firmly grounded in realism, which was part of its charm. It was exaggerated realism, sure, but nonetheless, it set the rules of what to expect strictly within the realms of possibility. Perhaps abandoning that was an effort to stylize the film, but I genuinely think that was a mistake. When Mulan arrives at the training grounds for new soldiers, we're vaguely introduced to a handful of characters, one of which is Cricket, and apparently they call him that because he's lucky. They took the lucky Cricket from the animation and turned him into an actual person. So we got both the Falcon and the Cricket from the animation in personified forms, but we don't get a Mushu character? Fuck off, Disney. Mulan has a weird tiff with some dude that seemed wholly out of character for her, and then the commander shows up to intervene. Oh god, they dragged poor Donnie Yen into this. Okay, so this guy next to Mulan is, and I'm gonna butcher this, Hong Hui? And I'm not kidding you when I say that I had no idea what this guy's name was until the hour and 10-minute mark. If they said his name, I completely missed it. That's another big issue with this movie. No one's name, aside from Mulan's and her alias, are spoken often enough for the audience to really internalize who each character is. Also, Mulan's alias is Hua Jun instead of Ping. Again, this isn't a massive deal, but it played into the humor of the original. Everyone was skeptical of Ping's name, and it was an off-the-cuff name chosen by Mulan in a state of panic. At every avenue, the movie goes out of its way to make Mulan good at the things she does. But part of the charm of the original was watching her awkwardly adjust to the life of a soldier. She didn't have any chi or combat training or any of the advantages afforded to her by this film, and that made her rise to prominence among her comrades more rewarding. That growth also gave the audience time to bond with not just her, but Shang and the other named characters of her battalion. Oh, by the way, there is no Shang in this movie. Couldn't have any homoerotic tension between the lead male and Mulan's male persona because think of the children. Without the pace of the original or the care from the screenwriters, all of our time is spent solely on Mulan with the occasional cut to Boris Kojo and Big Bird. All of the character development of Shang is lost since it clearly isn't passed to Donnie Yen or Hong Hui. What we're given in the place of this are really simple and uninspired training scenes where Donnie Yen awkwardly says the chorus of "Make a Man Out of You" like it's part of the curriculum, which, really Disney? You wouldn't commit to making this a musical, but you thought jamming lyrics into the dialogue was the move? Anyway, continuing on, we get a scene where Mulan is having a meal with the boys, and they're all laughing and basically having a conversation about women, which takes the place of the "a girl worth fighting for" scene. But this conversation feels empty because 1, I have no idea who these people are, with the exception of Cricket, but who gives a damn about Cricket? And 2, the song worked in the animation because we had an understanding of who each character was, so hearing about the kinds of women they liked or wanted for themselves was more insightful. Soon after, we get a fight between Mulan and not Shang. It's really not all that visually interesting, but we do get the kick.
Oh my god, he on X Games mode.
After this frankly inhuman display of technique, Mulan rushes off because her chi is showing, and for a moment, she forgets she's cosplaying as a boy, so she was afraid she'd get kicked out of the No Girls Club. Donnie Yen calls her to his tent after seeing how much chi she has, and essentially tells her, "Hey, you're holding back, stop doing that." And then she's suddenly good at everything. No real struggle or strife, nope, just a pip talk from Mr. Eatman. In the original animation, Mulan's motivation to go above and beyond stemmed from the fact that despite her efforts, she was still falling behind. Like when Shang picks up her weights after she damn near keels over. It's a simple gesture from both sides, but Shang's patience has run thin, and Mulan demonstrates shame for her failings. Shang straight up gives up on training her and sends her packing, which inspires her to give her training one last attempt. That's the turning point in her path as a warrior, as well as the moment she truly gains the respect of her peers and commanding officer. One song managed to pass the time, give Mulan the training she needed, and push her through an entire section of her character arc, and it did it organically. The time spent in the training camp in the live-action film genuinely feels pointless. Training is cut short as Mulan and the boys are sent off to battle with Crispy Khan's forces, which then lead to the destroyed village, like in the animation. Unlike the animation though, the moment has no weight. It's kind of like, oh, that's a lot of bodies. Alright, moving on. But in the original film, this discovery brings the lighthearted melodies of A Girl Worth Fighting For to a jarring and sobering halt. It drove home the threat of the enemy forces without having to show the enemy barreling through a fortified area 2 separate times. The scene held extra emotional weight for Shang, whose father had lost his life in the implied scuffle. None of that spirit is echoed here, with the characters just kind of noting that no one was left and moving on pretty quickly. It's difficult to feel anything for the soldiers when you're so disconnected from them as people. Even though we weren't connected to the dead soldiers from the animation, it was the connection to Shang that made the loss important for the audience. The only thing going through my head during the scene was how the background kind of reminded me of the Abyss Watchers from Dark Souls 3. The movie tries to make us feel something, anything, for the characters during a scene that's supposed to convey how fearful they are going into battle at sunrise, but I just couldn't bring myself to care. Borat Khan's crew clashes with Mulan's the next morning, and Mulan gets split off from her crew. Well, I say she gets split off, but she willingly follows the enemy by herself, which just feels exceedingly stupid. She ends up going toe-to-toe with the witch, who clearly has the upper hand. She says that Mulan's charade is making her weaker and poisoning her chi? Mulan gets wrecked, and then the Wicked Witch of the West dips out, but not before doing something that made me pause the movie and groan at an egregious volume. Now, bear with me, because I understand this is a nitpick, but it really annoyed the life out of me, so I have to get it out of my system. Okay, so the witch has these throwing weapons that she's been using basically in the entire movie. She uses one to disarm Mulan, and then after some back and forth, nails Mulan directly in the sternum with one. Where my issue comes in is how the weapon sends Mulan flying backward a pretty decent distance. If the witch genuinely threw that weapon with that much force behind it, given how small and narrow it is, it would have just passed right through Mulan. That should have been a done deal. Mulan should be dead. Roll credits. But whatever, gotta make things dramatic or else you wasted money buying too many wires. Now that I'm off that tirade, it's time for 2 more back-to-back. First up is how getting beat up and chastised by Pidgeotto was enough to convince Mulan to completely abandon her charade. Like, she willingly does it and goes back into the field, not as Hua Jun, but as Mulan, with her hair blowing in the breeze because maybe she's born with it, and maybe it's fucking Disney. She goes and tricks the Rorans into causing the avalanche themselves, which completely robs her of the additional respect she gains from her comrades seeing her do it in the animation. Though, they somehow know it's her who saves them anyway, because the script needs them to know that later. While we do get glimpses of Mulan thinking on her feet during the live-action film, watching the Rorans avalanche themselves isn't nearly as satisfying as watching Mulan trigger it herself in the animation. We get to see her training with the dragon rocket in the animation going from a novice to capable of hitting a target, so when she uses the rocket to all but destroy Shan Yu's forces, it's a payoff that's indicative of her growth. The avalanche scene is also the moment when I actually learned Hong Kui's name. I had to have missed it earlier, right? I had to have. Anyway, the confession scene is so devoid of emotion or tension for the audience. Mulan outs herself as a girl, and then Donnie Yen is like, "Aight, get lost, kid." Then Mulan asks to be executed, which yanked me right out of the moment. It's such a stark contrast to the OG that it feels like the screenwriters completely missed the point of what made the original scene so powerful. In the original, Mulan gets severely injured after setting her avalanche plan in motion, saving her comrades. She has no intention of breaking her charade but ends up falling unconscious due to blood loss. She's outed by the medic who informs Shang and that Chancellor guy, revealing Mulan's secret. Everyone in the party knows the penalty for Mulan's crime, and the tension is incredibly high. Mulan's friends try to intervene, but even they are stopped because they know the penalty for what Mulan has done is death. But at this point in the story, Shang and the others have grown to care for Mulan, and since we get to see that rapport form, we can empathize with the decision in front of them. Mulan doesn't ask for death, instead she tries to emotionally plead her case. Shang puts his own career and honor on the line by allowing Mulan to live, essentially paying back the debt he incurred when she saved his life. It's a powerful scene with a ton of nuance to it. It's what character writing and tension look like when handled with care. The tender, humorous, and serious moments we get to spend with the supporting cast make this scene the nail-biter that it is. Without that build-up, you get, well, the live-action iteration of the scene. Mulan wanders off and runs into Bird Box, who gives her directions to the plot, and then propositions her. She asks Mulan if she's a cop, Mulan says no, and then she asks Mulan to join her and become more powerful. And this is a big problem for the narrative. See, in any other material, this would be the point where Mulan flipped sides. She'd go with the witch, get fundamentally stronger, and then realize somewhere along the way that she chose wrong and go through a redemption arc. But because this is Disney, Mulan needs to take the high road, despite the witch having some pretty solid points. And with as frustrated and disgraced as Mulan feels, it doesn't make sense for her to turn down this olive branch. Honestly, she could have taken the witch's offer and helped her defeat Bo herself and save the kingdom. It's not like she's above killing her enemies, as we'll see later. So this moment really takes that suspension of disbelief and breaks it by loading it up with that trademark Disney high road optimism. From a moral point, it kinda makes sense, but it's very bad storytelling. Though, the more that I think about it, even from a moral point, it's kind of murky because as we see later, Mulan tries to nudge the witch into a redemption arc. But if she was that concerned with redeeming the witch, she'd have joined her and pushed her to help Mulan stop Shrimp Khan and save the kingdom. So either way you look at it, including this proposition was stupid. It's literally only here so that the witch's death is justified later, which it is not. Mulan heads off to the plot and convinces Donnie Yen to head straight for the Emperor, and then there's this exchange.
Khan is already far ahead. The Imperial Army can't stop him now. But perhaps a small, well-trained force could.
But wait, earlier, dude explicitly said,
"We have been called to war, even though our training is not finished."
So that was a fucking lie.
Donnie Yen isn't feeling it, but then Mulan's buddies chime in like it's supposed to make us feel anything. Like they're going for an I am Spartacus type scene.
I believe Hua Mulan.
I believe Hua Mulan.
I believe Hua Mulan.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Dirty Dad.
I'm Dirty Dad.
The end of this movie is about what you'd expect. It's a shit ton of wire work, an obnoxious amount of wire work really. The witch takes an arrow from Mulan and it kills her, but like, she's a witch. We've seen her move things without touching them. Why not just use her magic to send the arrow off course? Why did she feel the need to, you know what, I don't fucking care anymore. Honestly, of all the characters, the witch got shafted the hardest in the movie. She basically gets treated like shit by everyone and then unceremoniously dies. Mulan and Berry kicks have the most uninteresting fight I've seen in a hot minute that's capped off by the Kick 2 Electric Boogaloo. Fucking hate this movie. From here, we run through the end of the film relatively similar to the animation, and by this point I was ready to walk off the nearest tall building. This movie clocks in just under 2 hours, but it feels like it took 2 goddamn years to watch. I know I spent this entire video talking about the plot, so before I bring this to a close, let's chat about the other traits, starting with the acting and the dialogue. The acting was pretty stilted and awkward, but it wasn't offensive or unwatchable. It was mostly just dull and uninspired. The script though, boy was the script a big downside for this film. It lacked an organic flow to it, so it felt less like a true series of conversations and more like a bunch of vaguely trained people waiting for their turn to speak. The actors can only do so much with a mediocre script, and even great actors can only elevate poor dialogue, but so much. The villains did chew the scenery a bit, especially Boris Johnson Khan. Donnie Yen and Jet Li were basically sleepwalking through this entire film, and I can't say I blame them. Those Disney checks are probably still pretty good though. The scenery and sets at times looked pretty nice, but those were few and far between. The CGI was also pretty meh. Like, the Phoenix didn't blow me away, but it wasn't offensive either. There were a handful of times though when it was glaringly obvious a character was standing against a green screen like they filmed it at Six Flags, which made me laugh pretty hard. The absence of the iconic music, while expected, was still a major blow to the movie itself. The tracks injected so much additional life into an already fantastic film, and that charisma was sorely missed on this go-round. I really wanted to like this movie, I really wanted it to be good, because the animation is in my top 3 favorite Disney films of all time, so I was rooting for this to succeed. I knew it likely wouldn't live up to the bar set by the original, but I wasn't prepared for it to miss the mark by this much. If the Men in Black wiped my memory of the animation, I probably still wouldn't like this movie much, if at all. Characters aren't given time to shine or even be known. Moments that should strike an emotional chord aren't properly set up, nor are they given any time to breathe, and the titular character really isn't all that inspiring or interesting anymore either. At the end of the experience, I walked away from this film feeling like I'd just made a 2-hour mistake, and I couldn't help but ask myself an important question. When the hell are we going to get a sequel to Big Hero 6?
Yeah. But we're relying on a witch.
A witch.
You wicked bitch. Witch.
Oh my God.
Witch ass.
No.
Bitch.